Just some random reflections on the Shaq Albanese episode of recent days. There's this classic image of this huge black guy towering over this little Albanese who looks like a little schoolboy by comparison. You think his minders would have headed this image off in the media, in the blink of an eye, which they didn't, reflecting as it does Albo's stature as a political figure. But it does bring to mind this whole idea of just transplanting black politics in America to Australia. When the Black Lives Matter movement got going, there were immediately moves to set up an Australian chapter of this movement, as if to say, well, who cares about the culture, language and historical experience of black Americans? It's just the same as the black Australians, as if, it doesn't really matter. They just merge because, well, after all, they're just black. They're black people. Isn't the downgrading and demeaning of both cultures just what left-wingers would classically call racist? Not that this is a word in my lexicon. I don't use the word. I think it's an empty bit of sloganeering. I use this word against leftists the way they use it. But isn't it a little bit racist to say that nothing else matters but the fact that these people have black skin? If that's not racist, I don't know what is. Want to know about black Americans? Well, just go down to Australia and look at the black Australians. Do you want to know about the black Australian culture? Yeah, just go to America. It's all the same. Just black, But this also brings me to the issue of diversity. I'll bring in the Bible here. God is the creator of the races and of diversity, as we see in Deuteronomy 32, where God declares that he has created the races and that they should be living in their own designated areas, according to biblical teaching. But when you look at this word diversity from the leftist point of view, what they want is true diversity. They want everybody to be mixed up into one brown-coloured race so that we won't have conflict anymore between different racial groups. So we would still have conflict between the darker-skinned brown people and the lighter-skinned brown people. They say that true diversity is to ignore that there is such a thing as race. So we have an Aboriginal flag based on the separate identity of the Aboriginal race, I think that is. We must have a separate voice in Parliament for the black people of Australia based on their race. Although, as I've said many times, the vast majority of people who identify as black in Australia, especially those involved in black politics, are overwhelmingly of European ancestry. And there are other examples of this devious use of terminology by the left. For example, we could think about the People's Republic of East Germany back in the Cold War era that was called the German Democratic Republic. That was true democracy, real democracy, and it was too. According to wacky ideological thinking, East Germany was the most repressive state probably in world history, but it was true democracy. So it all comes down to the devious weaponization of words and terminology, which confuses people, and the majority of people in our society are easily confused. These are wedge issues which mess with people's minds, appealing to their better nature in a profoundly self-interested sort of way. And in Australian politics, we get this seemingly endless cycle of long periods of halfway reasonable, decent government by more conservative political parties. And I use that word with a bit of trepidation when applied to the coalition, but long years of relatively sensible, stable governance. The people, or the sheeple, as I prefer to call them, get bored with this, turf the coalition out, They just want to change. So we get chaotic rule by the likes of Gough Whitlam and Kevin Rudd. One thinks of Julia Gillard, a very ordinary person. She was just basically a Labor Party hack. She was identified as some kind of halfway plausible candidate to become Australia's first token woman Prime Minister, and she was just given red carpet treatment into that role. An entirely undistinguished politician. I've heard Conservative spokesmen laud Gillard for going gracefully into retirement and not getting involved in politics, and like the likes of Malcolm Turnbull. But why would she do that? She was a shallow person. She has nothing to contribute. So why would she get involved in the hurly-burly of politics after leaving office? So we had It's Time, Kevin 07, and now Albo. That's followed by a short episode of idiotic Labor rule. They get turfed out, and then we go back to something resembling sensible government. And returning to the Shaq incident, Albo is entirely unfit for office as Prime Minister of a country of 25 million people. And I think everybody knows that. Just have a look at this image. Sometime in the next 12 months or so, Albanese will screw up majorly. He'll screw up again. The major figures in the Labor Party will start smelling blood in the water, and then the big sharks will start circling Albo. He'll hold a press conference where he asserts that there is no threat to his leadership. All his colleagues will nod in agreement, and within the next couple of months he'll be out, and we'll have another revolving door series of PMs on the Labor side, and it will start all over again. That's all for now.